Due to some feedback on my other videos like this, I'm making a small disclaimer. I don't hate the movies I'm talking about. These are generally films I loved and watched repeatedly as a child. And as is often the case for the things we love, we're either completely blind to their flaws or we love them despite their imperfections. That's probably why my wife has stayed with me. So like a marriage between two people once madly in love ending in a bitter divorce because one of them is a psychopath, many films produced in the 20th century are problematic when seen through the eyes of a 21st century audience. Besides, we often mock what we love the most. I mean, my friends are constantly ripping on me for being fat, bald, and old. So if you find yourself getting angry watching this video, just remember, I'm probably just as much of a fan as you are. Also, spoiler warning for this 40-year-old film containing footage from 80-year-old films. Hi, editor here. It should have also been mentioned earlier that Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid contains a few scenes of mild sexual assault in the form of an unconscious woman being groped. So if this is something that's going to disturb you, you may want to give this video a miss. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid is a 1982 comedy noir starring Steve Martin as hard-boiled private detective Rigby Riordan, hired to solve a murder by the victim's beautiful daughter, Juliet Forrest, played by Rachel Ward. Rounding out the cast is Renee Santoni and Carl Reiner, who also directed the film and co-wrote it with Martin and George Guype. In a blink or you'll miss it silent cameo playing Ward's father is George Gaines, best known for either being Punky Brewster's adopted father Henry, or Police Academy's Commandant Lassard.
Mahoney.
If this cast list sounds somewhat sparse, that's because the gimmick of Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid is the filmmakers used footage from almost 24 black and white film noirs from the 1940s featuring A-list actors at the time like Humphrey Bogart, Joan Crawford, Kirk Douglas, Veronica Lake, and Vincent Price. Footage of Martin, Ward, and the others was then added to these clips to tell a new narrative. This is similar to what Steve Odekirk did with Kung Pao Enter the Fist, except while Odekirk recorded new dialogue over existing footage, Martin, Reiner, and Guype kept the lines from the original films and incorporated them into a brand new story. Which means that this upload has twice as many chances of being flagged by YouTube content matching than usual. The film begins with a dramatic car crash which dissolves into a spinning newspaper held by private detective Rigby Riordan sitting in his office. He is interrupted by Juliet Forrest, who promptly faints at the sight of the newspaper in the detective's hands. Catching the beautiful stranger in his arms, Riordan performs the first of several assaults against women featured in this movie.
What the hell does Marlon know? She was real all right.
After coming to, Juliet explains that it was her father who was killed in the earlier car crash. She suspects it was murder because he had been acting paranoid before the accident, most notably repeatedly making lists of names. These lists will serve as the film's MacGuffin, much like the One Ring in The Lord of the Rings if Sauron had been Mr. T. I'm trying to say these lists show up a lot. In the first of many such scenes, Juliet gives Riordan his first clue, a torn corner from a dollar bill with writing on it. Dismissive at first, he agrees to take the case.
If you want me to investigate your father's death, I get $10 a day.
Will $200 be enough in advance, Mr. Riordan?
$200, I'd shoot my grandmother.
For those of us born long after college was affordable, when adjusted for inflation, $10 in the 1940s would be roughly $200 today, while $200 in the 1940s would be roughly $4,000 today. Juliet also gives Reardon the key to her father's private office to investigate. On the way there, the detective casually objectifies women in a voiceover.
I hadn't seen a body put together like that since I'd solved the case of the murdered girl with the big tits.
At the office, Reardon finds a photo of the dead scientist's girlfriend, Kitty Collins, and 2 lists of names marked Enemies of Carlotta and Friends of Carlotta. His search is disrupted by the first of the archive footage, in this case, hitman Alan Ladd from This Gun for Hire. Overall, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid does a good job merging scenes filmed 40 years apart. But for all the care they took to match the 1980s set to the one from the 1940s, you'd think they would have done a better job of finding a door number that looked the same. Reardon is shot and feigns death to fool the shooter, who steals back the lists. What kind of hitman doesn't put one in the head to make sure the victim was dead? He certainly did not deserve the $25 he was probably paid for that job. Instead of going to the hospital, Reardon arrives at Juliet's house and is greeted by her German butler before fainting.
Catch me.
Sorry, I'm a butler, not a catcher.
Considering how people who faint are treated in this movie, he's probably lucky the butler just let him fall. In one of several running gags, Juliet sucks the bullet from Reardon's arm as if treating snakebite. He asks about her father's girlfriend, and Juliet explains Kitty is a singer at a private club. She also provides a suspicious note her brother-in-law wrote to her father referencing a dollar bill. As Reardon prepares to leave, Juliet casually mentions her cleaning woman. This causes the detective to snap and attack her. Coming to his senses, he explains that his father ran off with the cleaning woman, and ever since then, those words trigger an involuntary violent response. In what is a depressingly common occurrence in real life, the assaulted woman apologizes to her attacker for provoking him.
Oh, you poor dear. I don't blame you for strangling me. I'll never say it again.
Reardon visits Juliet's brother-in-law and retrieves the $1 bill, which matches the piece from earlier, which turns out to be a Carlotta list.
Most of the names are illegible, but I can work out Kitty Collins and Sweet Anderson.
Illegible? What the hell is she talking about? That handwriting is better than mine. Reardon decides to investigate Kitty Collins. He trails her to a restaurant where he sees her hiding a piece of jewelry. Inside, he finds yet another Carlotta list and an address to Swede Anderson, Kitty's other boyfriend. Reardon arrives at Anderson's apartment just in time to be inadvertently shot by hitmen sent to kill the other man. After Juliet sucks the bullet from his arm, she gives him another clue from her father, this time a key to a train station storage locker.
Number's been filed off. What's it say on that envelope?
Most recent rat.
With as many clues as she's giving the detective, maybe he should be paying her $10 a day. Reardon heads to the train station to see what's in the locker, and wait, shouldn't locker numbers be in sequence? Reardon opens the locker. And can you guess what's inside? Of course, it's more Carlotta lists.
The first name that jumped out at me was F.X. Huberman, number 46 Baycourt Drive, Grenion Point.
Those papers do not contain any street addresses. And why did he leave them in the locker? Arriving at the location that absolutely was not on the list he looked at earlier, Reardon is surprised to learn that the person he was looking for was an attractive woman who proceeds to drug him and steal the locker key. Back at his office, Juliet again produces another note from her father. Realizing it's a reference to a newspaper article, and with what passes for an extremely mild gay joke for an early 80s film,
Maybe I'll wine and dine you some night soon. I'll wait.
You'd wine and dine her for information.
Her. Him.
Reardon learns about a South American cruise ship owned by a man who has a habit of wandering around local supermarkets to pick up blonde women. That last bit wasn't in the newspaper article, but rather supplied by Reardon's partner at the detective agency, who just happened to phone in right as Reardon needed that information. Reardon's partner already happened to know the owner of the cruise ship, as well as the owner's habit of wandering local supermarkets to pick up blonde women. I love this movie, and I understand that merging old film noir scenes together to make a cohesive narrative had to have been extremely difficult. But between this and how often Juliet moves the story along by giving Reardon random notes from her father, sometimes I think the writers weren't really trying that hard. Looking for a blonde to get close to the cruise ship owner, Reardon visits several women from his past. After striking out the first time, his second attempt ends in failure as he goes on a strangling rampage after hearing the words "cleaning woman." His third attempt at finding a blonde spy seems the most promising, with Reardon describing how much in love with him she was despite how badly he treated her in the past.
I love you, and I mean that more than anything I've ever said in my life.
Ladies and gentlemen, the film's hero. However, Reardon's plan to use the woman is thwarted by her father, a powerful man determined to protect his daughter. This leads to what, in my opinion, is one of the greatest lines in motion picture history.
Don't go near my daughter again. Don't try to see her. Don't write her and don't phone her.
Can I use her underwear to make soup?
Here's looking at you, kid. Bond, James Bond. I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse. May the force be with you. Can I use her underwear to make soup? Reardon fails to bribe the father with a puppy and is forced to pick up a dog turd, which he then gives to an innocent receptionist.
Here's something for you, too.
Oh, thank you.
Which, in my opinion, makes the ass beating he subsequently gets from the father's goons mostly justified. Juliet finds Reardon somehow and is once again subjected to an inadvertent act of violence, followed by mild sexual assault.
You look awful.
It's all in the day's work.
The blood is on the other side. Reardon gives up on recruiting a blonde woman as a spy and decides to do it himself. He seduces the cruise ship owner and, after drugging the man, searches his home and finds, you guessed it, another list. This one matches the enemies of Carlotta. After another sequence of cross-dressing, getting shot, and having the bullets sucked out, Reardon and Juliet finally give in to their passion and start making out. They stop so Juliet can go to the drugstore for Reardon's bullet wound while the detective takes a call from a former lover. Juliet overhears the call and, in a trope far, far older than any of the films the producers used to make Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, mistakenly thinks that Reardon had simply been leading her on. Heartbroken, she immediately leaves Reardon and tells him to stop the investigation, which he does by flying all the way to South America after learning from his partner that Carlotta isn't a woman but an island off the coast of Peru. On the island in question, Reardon runs into an old friend, Rodriguez, who warns him how dangerous Carlotta is. Reardon also finds Kitty Collins singing in a local club. Later, the detective is approached at the bar by a sweaty fat man who offers him a bribe to leave the island.
You know who I could be?
Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Charles Lawton, the fat man here, famously played the Hunchback of Notre Dame in a 1939 film. After being drugged in his hotel room by Kitty, another member of the conspiracy tries to kill the detective. They struggle, and Reardon chases the man through town before shooting him. Searching the body, Reardon finds the final clue, which leads him to a warehouse where he finds Juliet, her father, who was still very much alive, and her butler, who was leading a group of Nazi soldiers. The butler identifies himself as a German field marshal determined to create the Fourth Reich. While held at gunpoint, together he and Reardon explain the Nazi scheme to Juliet. After learning that Juliet's father made a strain of cheese mold so potent it could dissolve bedrock, the Nazis posed as a humanitarian organization and fooled him into developing a weapon. A passing cruise ship stumbled upon one of their testing sites, so the Nazis decided to eliminate all the passengers. Before they had a chance to kidnap him and fake his death, Juliet's father assembled lists of the passengers as well as the Nazi agents, designating them as enemies of Carlotta and friends of Carlotta respectively. Reardon is jumped and handcuffed, but Juliet tricks her ex-butler into saying the words cleaning woman, which allows Reardon to break free in a psychotic fit and strangle the Nazi commander. This time, though, he doesn't grab his victim's tits. The Nazi leader manages to start the cheese weapon before Reardon shoots him, staying activated just long enough to wipe out one American city.
At least we got Terre Haute, India. Yeah.
As a kid, watching a Hollywood movie and hearing the familiar name of a tiny city from my rustic flyover state blew my mind. Rodriguez arrives with his men to arrest the Nazis, and Reardon and Juliet share a kiss.
What a guy.
What a guy.
The film ends with Juliet adjusting Reardon's willy as a charmingly cute callback to those moments in the film when Reardon casually groped her breasts while she was unconscious. Critically speaking, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid has the same problem as any modern spoof movie. Lots of forced scenes that have no bearing on the actual plot of the film and do little more than remind the viewer that they're watching a spoof movie. For example, in a traditional narrative, going through this bizarre sequence of trading a $5 bill for the much more important $1 bill would serve as a way to introduce Juliet's brother-in-law as an important character. Except this is the only time the man appears in the film, apart from a casual mention of his death later on. There is another moment where Reardon makes a call to Juliet's hysterical sister. It lasts only a minute and was completely pointless to the overall story. The scene wasn't even that funny. That time Reardon was shot while making coffee for the murdered boyfriend? The victim died before he could tell the detective anything, so it had zero bearing on the plot and was just shoehorned in. These scenes are probably well known to aficionados of the 1940s film noir genre and included to appeal to those who would recognize them, like how modern spoof movies often contain random references to contemporary films. But for those who don't know much about classic black and white cinema, scenes like this can feel somewhat baffling. As far as comedies from the 1980s go, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid is pretty tame when it comes to the usual stuff that doesn't age well. There wasn't any casual racism, and even a scene with two men kissing wasn't treated with the usual gay panic. Sexism? Hoo boy. And that's the problem when judging this film. On one hand, much of early Hollywood contained rampant sexism, so that casual sexual assaults and other violence against women in this movie could be considered just another aspect of the spoof. On the other hand, this was the early 1980s, and it's not like that era of film also didn't contain rampant sexism. It's debatable whether or not the sexism in Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid was intentionally mocking early Hollywood's treatment of women, or just another product of the time in which it was produced. My opinion is it was not intentional because of one key element: the lack of character reckoning. The closest Reardon ever got to a comeuppance was having Juliet grabbing his willy, which, let's be honest, is less of a punishment as it is a great way to spend an afternoon. Let's contrast the protagonist in Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid with one from another Steve Martin film from the late 2000s, The Pink Panther 2. Like Peter Sellers' classic portrayal, Martin's version of Jacques Clouseau is sexist and casually racist enough where he is ordered to attend sensitivity training. But by the end of that movie, Martin's character does eventually learn to correct his behavior. In Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, however, Rigby Reardon never experiences such a reversal. The film started with him sexually assaulting an unconscious woman and ends with him joking about that same woman appearing nude in a hypothetical sequel. Reardon tried to put innocent women in physical danger to further his own ends, taking advantage of their feelings for him, even mocking one of them for it. And he still ended up with the girl at the end. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid still remains a very funny early 1980s comedy spoof, just with many of the problems to be expected for a film released at that time. It's well worth a watch and is available for purchase on most streaming services. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. There's more content on my channel, including other films that didn't age well and a whole bunch of Scooby-Doo related stuff.